Welcome back, pre-AP nerdlings. This is the final part of Microscopes and the Cell, Part 3 for pre-AP. So the nucleus. This is the control center of the cell, kind of like the team leader. It directs the manufacture of proteins, and it's made up of a nuclear envelope that protects the nucleus, similar to the cell membrane. So here's the nucleus. It also has a nucleolus, where all of the nuclear material, or DNA, is compressed. Whenever we undergo cell division, which is the process of mitosis, this chromatin in the center of the cell, right here, is going to condense into the form of a chromosome. The nuclear envelope protects the nucleus. So chromatin is like the cell's library. It contains the hereditary information, and the nucleolus also produces the ribosomes. So next we're going to talk about cytoplasm of the cell. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance that encloses the cell and is enclosed by the cell membrane. It's also called cytosol. It provides a medium for chemical reactions to take place. This is also where all of the organelles hang out, kind of like floating around the pool of cytoplasm. The cytoplasm contains all of the organelles that are used to carry out specific jobs in the cell, like the chloroplast, the mitochondria, lysosomes, ribosomes, the nucleus. Pretty much every organelle is floating around in the cytoplasm. The mitochondrium. This is the powerhouse of the cell. It's this rod-shaped structure right here, and it's the site of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is how we produce ATP, or energy, of the cell. And it is produced in an intermembrane folded system. So again, we have our mitochondria, which are these guys right here. And it has this intermembrane system that we call cristae. And this is where ATP is produced. We'll talk a lot more about that when we get into cellular respiration. We have the endoplasmic reticulum. There are two types. We have smooth ER, which lack ribosomes, and then we have rough ER, or the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which has ribosomes on the surface. The rough endoplasmic reticulum makes proteins to export to other areas of the cell, while the smooth endoplasmic reticulum moves proteins that are used in the cell. So here we have our two pictures. This is the rough endoplasmic reticulum. All these little black dots here, these are ribosomes. Over here we have smooth ER that don't have ribosomes on them. Ribosomes are the protein factories, and they lack membranes, so they're found in both eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells, because as you recall from our previous lecture, prokaryotic cells do not have membrane-bound organelles. Some ribosomes are free-floating, and some are attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. Next, we have the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus is a stack of tubular membranes, kind of like stacks of pita bread. That's what they look like. They're the post office of the cell. So over here, we have our endoplasmic reticulum. Endoplasmic reticulum packages proteins. They pinch these proteins off in a vesicle. This vesicle then gets transported to the Golgi apparatus. The Golgi apparatus then sorts these proteins and eventually transports it out to the other side of the Golgi apparatus, where it's pinched off into another vesicle and transported wherever it's needed in the cell. Lysosomes. Lys, again, meaning to split. Lysosomes contain digestive enzymes. These break down food and worn out cell parts for cells. They're also programmed for cell death, so they lyse and release enzymes to break down and recycle cell parts. Programmed cell death is called apoptosis. So apoptosis is programmed cell death, and lysosomes are what is responsible for this. Next, we have vacuoles. Plant cells have a central large vacuole that is not present in animals, and this is used to store materials. We have food vacuoles that store food, and contractile vacuoles that help get rid of water. So in plant cells, we have this large central vacuole. It is surrounded by a tonoplast. The tonoplast contains cell sap, which consists of sugars, proteins, minerals, wastes, and pigments. Next, we have our cytoskeleton. This is what helps give our cell structure. We have two main types of cytoskeletal structures. We have microtubules, which are protein, and they're hollow tubes. And then we have microfilaments, which are solid and thin. So these right here are our microfilaments. Our microtubules are these little blue guys down here. We have centrioles. These are called centrioles. These are near the nucleus, and they are paired structures that help in cell division. So if you look at my little model of a cell right here, these right here are the centrioles. And whenever we have cell division occurring, or mitosis, they line up at both of the poles of the cell, and they form spindle fibers, which help to pull the chloroplast or the chromosomes apart. They also have flagella. Flagella moves the cell, and these are long whip-like structures on the cell surface. You could see flagella over here on these little sperm cells. So we have our little army of sperm with their flagellum. The flagellum, again, are these whip-like structures that helps for movement. In this case, the movement of the flagella is propelling that little squiggly sperm to an egg, or at least it's hoping to get to an egg to fertilize it. Cells or animal cells can also have cilia. Cilia moves the cell, and they're these short little hairy structures on the surface of the cell that helps it creepy crawly along the path. So here we have cilia. So I want to make sure that you take notes over the different types of animal cells. These always appear on tests, especially when you're talking about structure and function. The ones that I see a lot of are the nerve cell, because nerve cells, the structure aids in the function of the transmit of nerve impulses. We have this long myelinated sheath right here that connects to the head of the cell, or the dendrite. And this long part right here is called the axon. We have sperm cells, white blood cells, red blood cells, cheek cells, muscle cells, paramecium, and amoeba. These are all examples of animal cells, but like I said, I would take special note of the nerve cells. So plant organelles. We have a cell wall, and this gives the cell a definite shape. It's made out of cellulose, which, if you remember, is a complex carbohydrate. It is a polysaccharide that composes the cell walls of plants. We also have a chloroplast. This is a food factory, and it contains chlorophyll. It also has its own DNA site of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast, and it has its own DNA. So again, this is something you really want to pay close attention to. The two types of plant cells that I've seen over and over on tests are the root hair cells right here. And the root hair cells function in maintaining osmotic pressure, or water exchange, and nutrient exchange, and also guard cells. Guard cells open and close on the stomata of leaves to allow water and gases to come into and out of the cell. So what are the differences between plant cells and animal cells? Well, animal cells are relatively smaller in size, while plant cells are a little bit larger. Animal cells have a blobbish, irregular shape because they lack a cell wall, while plant cells have a cell wall and they have a regular, boxy, rigid shape because they have cellulose cell walls that help them maintain that shape. Animal cells do not have cell walls. They only have a plasma membrane. Animal cells have very small vacuoles, or they don't have any vacuoles at all, while plant cells have a very large central vacuole that contains water as well as different types of sugars. Animals store their food in the form of glycogen, which is a carbohydrate. Plant cells store their carbohydrates, or their sugars, in the form of starch. Animal cells have their nucleus located in the center of the cell, while plant cells have their nuclei being located near the cell wall. So similarities between plant and animal cells. Both plant and animal cells have a cell membrane surrounding the cytoplasm. They both have a nucleus. They both contain mitochondria. So this concludes part 3 of microscopes and cells. I'll see you guys soon.